News.
Welcome back. Well, let's go back now to the big political story of the day in Washington, D.C., what appears to be the pending release of a memo by Republican Congressman Devin Nunes, head of the House Intelligence Committee, that alleges the FBI abused its authority during its investigation of links between the Trump presidential campaign and the Russian government. The FBI and Justice Department have strongly opposed the memo's release, saying it exposes classified material and could compromise ongoing probes. Democrats say the document is a selective partisan attack designed to discredit the probe of special counsel Robert Mueller and possibly lay the groundwork for the president to fire him and the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Well, joining us from New York is Vinoo Varghese. He's a criminal defense attorney. And from Los Angeles, Bobby Ciccone, retired FBI special agent. Bobby, I have to ask you, as a former agent, what does it mean for the Bureau to have it in such direct conflict with the President of the United States and the Republican majority in Congress?
Well, it's unfortunate, obviously, the way everything's developed, and I wish they weren't in direct conflict, and I wish the FBI would have taken a step back and not opposed the release of this memo on the grounds that it did this week. I think that there are grounds that are valid that the FBI could voice, such as protection of sources and methods or impacting ongoing investigations. However, the stated opposition in the statement from the FBI this week was that there were omissions that made the conclusions in the memo inaccurate. That's not a position the FBI needs to take. That's an opinion, and it's a political opinion in this environment. And had the FBI used different reasoning behind their opposition to the release of the memo, I would be more in favor of it. However, I just think it's a bad road to go down for the FBI now to be challenging the conclusions. That's a political decision that should be hammered out in public between the Republicans and Democrats, and the FBI shouldn't be taking a stance in that fight.
Vinoo, what about the Justice Department? Because we have heard the FBI has come out pretty strongly against this, saying they are concerned about factual inaccuracies in the way it will be portrayed. The Justice Department has called the release extraordinarily reckless if it goes forward. What's your take?
I think President Lincoln said during the Civil War, before his debate with Stephen Douglas, that a House divided cannot stand. And here, House Republicans should be listening to its intelligence community. The DOJ and the FBI have made very strong statements, very rare positions for these agencies to take. When the DOJ calls the release of this document extraordinarily reckless, the government should listen. House Republicans should listen. What's the irony here is that Devin Nunes is the one who recently was the spearhead behind giving more power to Congress, to the FISA court, to allow for warrantless surveillance of Americans. And here, he's criticizing the same process. The irony here is thick.
Bobby, let me ask you, does it matter in terms of the impartiality of an FBI investigator, who he voted for in the last presidential election? If his wife is running for office for a particular party? Are these not kind of questions opening up really a Pandora's box that could really damage the Bureau?
Well, of course, and I think that some of the behavior of the agents actually adds fodder to those arguments, whether they're true or not. And I think that it's unfortunate that things develop that way. In my FBI, when I was an agent many years ago, that wouldn't have happened. A high-ranking bureau official who had a spouse running for office would have been recused from any investigation relating to anything, even cursory, even peripherally involved in politics. And that agent would have been put on another assignment. However, in this case, those decisions weren't made that way.
What about
a new way of doing business at the upper echelons.
What about some Republicans are saying it depends who they voted for in the last election? Is that a legitimate line of inquiry for them to be taking?
No, normally it's not a legitimate line of inquiry. Obviously, no. I don't think that's a legitimate line of inquiry. However, given the polarized times we live in, and given the fact that these are very political investigations, it doesn't surprise me that that kind of mud is being slung around.
Vinoo, your take?
I don't think that who they voted for really matters. I think the issue here is the fact that you have the intelligence community screaming at the Republicans to not release this memo. And the Democrats were not given an opportunity to do a counter memo. The Republican senator from Louisiana today has issued a statement saying that the Republicans in the House should not release this. So there are a number of Republicans, not just him, who are saying, hold off here. And because this involves methods. So what Bobby was saying initially, it's actually the methods that are the problems. That's going to be released, and that's what the DOJ is really concerned about here, calling it extraordinarily reckless.
I want to take this one step further. Let's say that the memo is going to be released as is expected. The thinking is that this might be a pretext for the Trump administration, for Trump himself, to fire the Deputy Attorney General. Now, given that after firing Comey, that helped lead to an obstruction of justice investigation, what would that scenario look like?
You know, this is it sounds too eerily similar to President Nixon and the Saturday Night Massacre here, because it was Rod Rosenstein who signed off on the extension of the warrant for Carter Page, Trump's foreign policy advisor, who had met with Russian officials. So they're looking at this as maybe a grounds to potentially fire him. I hope it doesn't go that way, and I hope that cooler heads prevail, and I hope that the Republicans in Congress who are actually more level-headed would take a look at this and say, hey, we've got to work with our intelligence community. And again, the irony here is that Devin Nunes is the one who allowed for and pushed for greater power for the FISA court.
And Bobby, are you fine with that comparison with Richard Nixon's famous Saturday Night Massacre? If in fact we now see the president fire either top Justice Department officials or even the head of the FBI that he appointed?
Well, sure, there are similarities. You can't ignore them. When the president is under investigation and when people around him are under investigation and he starts terminating people that are even peripherally involved in those investigations, in this case actually very involved in those investigations, there's true concern for someone that's meddling in the process.
All right, Bobby Chacon and Vinoo Varghese, thank you both very much for weighing in. An important story in Washington, and we'll see even by the end of this day in Washington what comes out of there. We're going to go out for a quick break right here on The Rundown, but coming up,